Good evening and welcome to Gigi's Ghastly Ghosts. I have a few fun stories for you tonight. I'm going to label this segment Amy, as Amy is my sister. Most of the stories you've heard before, I know you've heard me discuss having a sister and Amy in a few of those stories, in a few of the houses. We've had a lot of our experiences together, but I was talking to my sister today and realized there's a whole bunch of things I still haven't told you yet. First one, we lived in this house on Brigham Street in Plainwell, Michigan, downtown. And she reminded me that when we were kids, we had a seance. I was in the seventh grade, Amy was in the fourth grade. And we're having a little kid seance with a bunch of little kid girls, thinking, nothing's going to come of it. It's just child's play. But during the middle of this seance, the radio in the dining room turned on all by itself. It's pretty freaky. And then, soon after that, the back door opened and slammed. It was as if somebody had been standing there and decided they were ready to leave. Maybe they didn't like the seance. My sister's 3 years younger than me, and when I was about 30 years old, I had been talking to, I was a pediatrics nurse at the time, and I was talking to an employee who worked there at the office, and she told me that she grew up in a neighborhood with the old state hospital. And she said there were a lot of goings on, and everybody who lived in that neighborhood, whatever windows were facing that side toward the hospital, would keep their shades shut due to noises. Lights would pop on in the night. The middle of the night, the lights would come on in that hospital. Mind you, that hospital was empty for many, many years, and it had a big fence surrounding the whole area, and the police would patrol to keep people out. But there were still lots of noises going on in that hospital as if it was still operating. So that piqued my interest. I actually told my sister about it, and we decided we were going to go there one night. It's about 10 o'clock at night. Amy and I, with my nephew in tow, he was probably 8 at the time, I think, 7 or 8. He was young, but he came with us, and we went. We went into this. We get to the neighborhood where the hospital is. The police were just pulling out, so we kind of just kept going like we weren't gonna stop, right? And then when we did stop the car, we were looking for an entrance, a way to get in through the fence, and some uh, people had just come out and they said, "Wow, it's pretty creepy in there." They said nothing had happened, but it was creepy. And they said, you could get in under the fence if you scooted under the fence on the side by the sidewalk. So that's what we did. We get in there and we're walking toward the hospital, and all of a sudden there was like this huge noise from inside right in front of us as we're ready to enter the hospital. Doors slamming, it just became very active. And then you could hear things in the bushes moving. There was a lot of vegetation, a lot of overgrowth in that area. It could have been animals, but it was just very odd that those people literally had just come out and nothing happened. There were no sounds. It was dead quiet for them. And then we start walking up, and it was just like all hell's breaking loose in there. Doors slamming, things making noise, the wind kicking up, the bushes wrestling. So I all of a sudden got this fear of impending doom. And I looked at my sister, and it was a total understanding. I didn't have to say anything to her. We hightailed it out of there so fast. My nephew was the first one to drop and just roll under that, that fence to get out. My sister all of a sudden gets stuck under that fence. I don't know if she was breathing heavy and her chest was expanding, but she was stuck under that fence. And I was so scared that I literally felt like somebody was breathing down my neck. I had my foot on my sister in a hold of the fence, literally pushing her from out from underneath that fence. And as soon as she was out, boy, I dropped and rolled under there so quick I was out. We really had to stand against the car and catch our breath. We were so scared. And then my sister gets the camera out and decides she's going to take some pictures. We had just put fresh batteries in that camera, making sure it was ready for the night. So she starts taking pictures. Then nothing's recording. Like, you can't see anything. You can't review any of the pictures because guess what? The batteries are missing. That's right. We open up the battery compartment, empty. no batteries. We put those batteries in. I know we did. As we're standing there, I know no batteries dropped out of it. You would hear it. It would hit our feet. We were standing right there. There's just no way. So it was crazy. And needless to say, we left. Well, after that, my sister said for about a week, she would have dreams that a lady was waking her up and she would shake her awake violently just to tell her never to come back to that place again. This woman told my sister that that hospital was not safe. Also, her two children, my niece and nephew, had nightmares for that whole 2 weeks, and my sister said her cat acted really strange and would not leave the side of my niece. So, knowing that the woman was very adamant that my sister not come back and tell her that this place wasn't safe, what did my sister do? Of course she went back. She went back to that hospital by herself. She this time made it inside. She went into the hospital and she said as soon as she got through the doors, the whole place smelled of hot urine, hot fresh urine. And she said it was just really overwhelming. And she said that the doors were slamming, and she said as she's standing in the room, she could hear glass breaking, like the windows were just breaking out next to her. The sound was there, but the windows, they were still intact. They weren't breaking. She said she did manage to take a few pictures on the inside. In the pictures that she took, she did capture bolts of light, like lightning bolts running through those photos. She still has these today. She says they're in storage, and at some point she'll probably dig them out. So when she does, I'll have to post those for you. But when she went outside and she was leaving, she actually turned back around and took a picture. And she said in one of the windows, there was an elderly woman, and she had her chin leaning on her fist and just kind of looking out the window. So we wondered if maybe that was the lady that told Amy not to come back. I don't know. But she left after that, and nothing else ever happened. So thank goodness for that. She then said, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona soon after that. And my sister ended up moving into that neighborhood. She said that at some point she saw a truck there, and she thinks it might have been a shaman, according to some of the tools and things that he had with him. And she said he had a van and all the things that she saw in the van and, things he was bringing out. And she's pretty sure that whoever owned that hospital, I don't know if the state owned it or if a private owner had it at this point, but she said she thinks somebody brought in a shaman to try to get rid of the negative entities in this building. Whether it worked or not, we don't know. But soon after that, they tore the whole building down. And still to this day, that spot is empty. Nothing else was ever rebuilt there. Now, the next few stories come from my sister, and these are from the hospital that she worked at. My sister worked at a hospital called Bronson. It's in Kalamazoo, Michigan. If you're from that area, you would know it. It's a big hospital. So she tells me she worked there early mornings, and she says sometimes she would go in at 3 o'clock in the morning to clean the tray line in the cafeteria. And she says one morning at 3 o'clock, she's there cleaning, and she hears a big swoosh from the front of the kitchen. So she goes to the front of the kitchen. All of the racks had slid off and onto the floor. So these are the big racks that they keep bread on, food on. But they didn't make a clanking sound when they hit the floor. She said they just made a swoosh sound and they were all on the floor. Another time, 5 a.m., she's in the kitchen. All the utensils are hanging up. She's doing her prep work. All of a sudden, all these utensils start swaying violently and clinking together. For no reason. She was the only one there. Another time, she was with a student in the salad prep area. And as they're doing their prep work, she said all of a sudden it sounded like beating down the wall. And this is in the morning. Later in the morning, though. And the beating started at one end and kind of went down the wall. And she says she went on the other side of the wall to look and see. Nobody was over there. So she walks down further into the kitchen where everybody's standing and asks if anybody was just there. And they said, no, Amy, we're on this side of the kitchen. So she goes back to the salad prep area where the student is, where there's a wide-eyed student. The student asks if this place is haunted, and my sister says, well, it is a hospital. And the student says, I can't be here anymore. And my sister said, well, you got to make your own decisions. Whether the student quit or not, I have no idea. She says the North Campus had a very scary hallway leading to it. She says if you went at 5 o'clock in the morning, and that's when she usually had to go, she said coming down that hallway, you had this really horrible sense of dread. It made you sick to your stomach, nauseous, just thinking something really horrible was going to happen. And she was only going to the kitchen there on the North Campus. But she had this feeling at every time she went down there in the morning. She says in her mind's eye, she has this vision of this really big man who is extremely miserable and is just projecting his misery right into that area. And she's not the only one. A lot of other people have made comments that they're very uneasy in that hallway, and that hallway makes them not feel well. And she said if you go down the hallway at noon, it's gone. That feeling's gone. She says it's just there early mornings for whatever reason. Another time she was in the kitchen and she said for some reason the bread would just randomly fly off the trays. They'd fly out at her. They'd just fly off and land on the floor. She says one morning she went in and all the bread was on the floor. Another time she was cleaning the grill in the kitchen and she had a stepladder to get up to this grill because it was a very big grill. And as she's standing up on top of the grill cleaning, that the step stool that she climbed up on to get up on the grill was violently knocked to the floor. And she had no idea how it just got knocked down. It was wide open, sitting on all four. It just collapsed, broke, fell, whatever. She doesn't know. But she couldn't get down. If she would have tried to jump down, she would have landed on that ladder that was now laying across there. So she couldn't do that. She probably would have broken an ankle. So she waited. She was stuck on top of that grill for 15 minutes until somebody walked to the back of the kitchen where she was and helped her get down, had to set that stool back up. She also says that the shelf they keep all the hats for hot plates on will just randomly come flying off at her in the morning. Just all of them would just come flying down. She said that happened often. So she says out of all the places she's worked, that was the one place that she had so many crazy things happen. Soon after that, she left and she went to a nursing home. And I asked her about the nursing home, and she said, well, there's definitely something there. She said, but nothing was violent. Nothing really happened. She said you could feel that you weren't alone. She says, but normally nothing much happened. She said every once in a while the steamers or the oven doors would come flying open, but she says that was about it. Another time, back in that old house that I told you, there was a man that had passed away in that house, and the lights would flicker when we'd ask him questions. Well, in that house, my mom and I were sitting in the living room one evening, and I kept turning around saying, I feel like we're being watched. I feel like somebody's here. Apparently, my sister was asleep in her bedroom, and she thinks she astro projected into the living room, and she could hear me saying, I think somebody's watching us, and me looking at her. Even though I didn't see her, she saw me looking because I felt somebody was there. And then the old man pops up and tells my sister, you need to go get back in your body right now. Go right now. He was very demanding that she go back into her bed right now. And she did. And she said when she went back into her room, it was like she was jolted awake. She said it was the most violent jolt. She'll never forget it. And that's the only time that's ever happened to her, but scared her pretty good. And the last little Amy story I'm going to tell you is my sister got remarried, and she married a man with a child. Well, she was sleeping one night, and a woman came to her in her sleep and said, who the heck are you? And my sister says, what? And she says, who are you? And my sister says, I'm Amy. And she said, well, where's Lori? And my sister says, Lori's at home in her own bed. And she says, well, I've come to check on my grandson. And Amy says, who are you? And she says, I'm Lori's mother. And Lori is my sister's husband's ex-wife. So she says, I come here to check on my grandson from time to time. And apparently, she didn't know in the spirit world that her daughter was divorced and that her son in law was remarried. So she told my sister that she was there to check on her grandson, which would be my sister's stepson. And she said, please tell Lori that I'm very disappointed in the choices that she's made. And then she was gone. In the morning, my sister told her husband what had happened, and she explained to him what she looked like, and he says, yep, that sounds like Lori's mother. Anyway, it's kind of a short one, but that's all I got for you tonight, folks. Tune in next Saturday night for a new set of ghost stories. And if you'd like to share your ghost stories with me, make sure you email me. I'd love to hear your stories and tell them on this channel. You can email me at jennyjgoff@gmail.com, and I will put my email in the description box below. Thanks for hanging out with me for a few. Have a great rest of your weekend.